Hello, sports fans. And no, this is not a sports talk. This is a nerd talk. But this is Chris from the studios of WFC3. Welcome to the Mighty Monkey Podcast. We're talking about Flower City Comic-Con and all of the things that go around it. It's in the studio again with Billy. Hello. Tanya.
Hello.
Deanna.
Hello.
Tony.
Howdy.
And Sybil.
Hi.
You just want to get all those S's in there.
I do. That was just one of those things. Sybil and I have known each other for 4 years now, and we've volunteered for another convention a while back, and I don't even know. It wasn't like one of those things we planned on doing. It just kind of spontaneously happened. Whenever I'd see her, I would just roll that S out there, and it was Sybil. And I'd get in return. So we got our own little shtick going, and so you'll see that. Sybil, our box office goddess, manager of the front end, and all being master of time, space, and dimension when it comes to the front of the convention.
She was amazing.
Oh my God, I'm telling you, the conditions that we unfortunately left you guys in for that 16 show, and you hung in there and just owned it. It was amazing. But now here we are, podcast number 2. Look at this.
Dun dun dun.
There was that speech from Major League. Yeah, we won yesterday. We won today. If we win tomorrow, that's a winning streak. They have been known to happen. So we're one podcast away from a winning streak. So what we're going to do today, we're going to chat a little bit more about what we're planning on doing. We talked in the last podcast. We talked a little bit about what we like and what we see and what we're interested in and how we're planning on doing things. And we went sideways on a couple of different directions and had a good time.
Straight and narrow today.
No, not going to. No, don't even think that's going to happen.
If we ever go straight and narrow, we got a problem.
I know, seriously.
Hey, you're supposed to back me up here.
We have the likelihood of going straight. We have the likelihood of staying on point as Billy's licorice bag over there has a point of staying empty or staying full. He's mowing through
the epitomized squirrel from the movie.
I've never seen anybody plow through licorice like that.
Oh, I love licorice.
See, there's a quick way to Billy's heart is through a licorice bag.
And by the way, I'm diabetic, so if I go into shock
thank you for that. That's good to know.
911 will be very fast.
I'm good. Because there's no mouth-to-mouth going on in this room, Sunshine. I'm sorry to tell you that. But
boy.
What I want to do today...
Protein. You need protein to offset that.
There you go. So, like what? What, Zweigels?
Could be. Garbage plates.
Garbage plates.
Oh, yeah. There's no carbs in a garbage plate at all.
Is this going to have to be a thing where, like, during every podcast we have to bring up garbage plates? Because that's 2 in a row now.
Well, it could be the CM Dean from Brian and I.
Oh,
You're just
don't know.
lucky that he's not here.
I'm sticking to garbage plates.
I did wear Sam today.
Yeah, I see that.
Okay.
I'm going to stick to garbage plates then. So where I want to do, at least for the first part of the podcast, is I want to kind of start cluing people into where we're going with Flower City Comic-Con. We don't want to do just the same thing every year and expect you to come back and deal with the same thing every year. And so we have the whole first floor of the convention center once again. We want to kind of streamline how we use the space. We want to use it a little bit better. We want to kind of spread things out, put more activities in. We want to really feel like we know what we're doing. We learned so much with the first show. Now with the second show, we want to try and amp it up a little bit. And then from there, start expanding out and working the more of the building and bringing more choices and more entertainment to the population. With that being said, what is the first thing, Tanya? I'm going to ask this question to you, and then I'm going to come over here behind me to Tony. I'm going to ask Tony because Tony is relatively a Comic-Con. He's a newbie.
I'm very green.
He's very green. He just went to his first comic book convention recently.
Is that because you ate so many garbage plates?
Oh, you know what? That was pushing it. And
I'm trying. I'm sorry.
Well, it's not easy being green.
It's so kind of you to actually acknowledge that.
Anyway, okay, yeah. Oh God, that was bad.
No, it was pretty good, actually.
Here.
All right. So no, we're gonna ask this question around the panel, okay. And I've got Deanna and Sybil on the phone again, and that's wonderful to have you girls back. We love you. We miss you. We have to see you soon.
Yes, we will.
All right. But Tanya, what's like a thing that you like to see in a comic book convention?
Silence. She likes a quiet area.
Yeah, apparently she wants to.
Oh, definitely. The quiet area was.
And we're going to have that.
We had to have.
Oh,
being
I know.
a special education teacher myself, having that place to
retreat,
kind of just decompress
right.
when everything gets overwhelming. Because it was so overwhelming with the people and the guests and just everything that we had going on. to have that space. So yes, thank you for
That was a good cue. That was definitely a good segue there.
I'm like, I don't know, like.
Well, we have
because
this
I'm new to
growing
them, too.
we have this growing relationship with Autism Speaks. And it was wonderful to have them on board and being able to give them the attention they deserve. And then there's another outfit in the area, Faces of Autism, and it helped educate me just how prevalent the issue is. And so the fact that we could do that little gesture so that families could bring their children, no matter if they were gifted or not, and so we have this ability to kind of just give them a space so they can separate themselves from the show and let the child wind down a little bit, redirect their attention, focus in a different area, just kind of step back. And that helps families because, it's not cheap going to a convention, unfortunately. And I would hate to put them in a situation where they felt like they bought a ticket and they got an autograph, but they really couldn't spend that long a time. So it gives an opportunity to kind of
they don't have to leave.
Exactly.
They
don't have to leave.
a separate area in order to kind of, as I said, just decompress, de-escalate, in order to gather their wits, in order to.
Sometimes we need that as adults.
Absolutely.
I've been to. Our FC3 is a nice Comic-Con. It's a really good one. If you've ever been to one of the truly overwhelming ones,
SDCC.
San Diego,
New York.
I've been to Toronto a few times for Fan Expo in Toronto is the third largest I hear in North America. And I've been a few times, and when I go, my wife and I, Susan, we get the there's like a next level up that includes an early entrance and a room where you can just go and hang out in away from the crowds and. It comes in handy. It really does.
And we're going to continue to have that room. We had it last year. It was tucked in a back corner. This year we're changing things around in terms of the layout. But we're going to make sure to continue to preserve that ability so people can just kind of stop, break away, and get a chance to
even just
to
take a look at the maybe the stuff they've bought or think about the things they've seen or just to sit
maybe
down
plan
before,
the rest of their day.
Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Tony, how about you? What are some of the things you look into? You're just taking your first step into a much larger world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me personally, I like seeing games and other people who I can connect with and really talk to other people, and I like that.
It was cool. The like-minded stuff.
Yeah.
Beautiful. See? Billy, how about you? When you go to a comic book convention, what's one of the things you look for the most?
Two things. I love the panels, a chance to interact with artists or the celebrity guests or whatever. Even just when you're sitting in the panel room before the panel starts and say you're there to see a particular artist or Richard Hatch who's coming to FC3 this year. When you're, as Tony said, when you're around the people who like the same stuff you are, just natural conversations break out.
Yeah. And that's cool that you bring up panels. One of the things that I did, that I was behind for 2016 was the panel schedule. And when you're thinking about it and you're planning it and you've never done anything like it before, it's one thing. And then when the show is done and the dust has settled, you look back, you're like, okay, I learned so much, and here's where I got things wrong, here's where I got things right.
And there was a Doctor Who panel that you moderated.
Yes.
That was excellent to be in a room.
Thank you.
With a bunch of Doctor Who
fans
it
was fun.
all chatting. That was fun.
Yeah,
or the one we did with the TV and movies versus comic books.
Oh, that was a fun one.
Yeah, so
that was a lot of fun.
Those are all fun.
And this year, Tony here is going to be helping me design the panel schedule.
Oh, yeah.
And what are some of the things you'd like to try and program in to make sure that we're covering?
I definitely want to see big stuff like Star Wars and Star Trek, but I also want to see the smaller things like Attack on Titan or other things like that.
So anime panels now.
Oh yeah.
Would we set up panels for a particular show or just anime in general?
I think particular shows because I think there's a there's a big enough fan base in Rochester and in general in the to set up panels for shows.
We are once again going to have 3 panel rooms. We had 3 last year. They're going to be slightly different in terms of configuration and layout, but we'll have 3, and we will continue to have the staging area out in the main foyer of the convention center. So 4 areas for demonstrations and presentations. So we're looking forward to filling that schedule up, Tony and I, and a lot of help from our gang. Of course, we'll have the VIP panels. We're going to spread those out a little bit differently. We'll have our big talks about, the big shows and the niche markets and the genres and sci-fi and horror and fantasy and role-playing and gaming and cosplay. And just we're going to be bringing a lot of stuff to you through those panels. All right, who's next? Sybil. Sybil, tell me what you look for. I mean, like we mentioned in the first convention.
She looks getting out of the box.
She wants to get out of the box office, but also as a
get out of the box office.
as a lover of conventions yourself, sweetie, what's one of the things you look for the most?
Well, it's just kind of, I like everything. I like just feeling the energy in the crowd and what's going on. Like my first ever convention I ever went to was San Diego Comic-Con, and I was
that's quite a first.
I was 11 years old.
Wow.
The first movie I ever made was Star Wars.
So that was my first convention, and I remember being, I was like me and my brothers, and we were allowed to walk around the convention by ourselves. We didn't need adult supervision because there were enough other adults around that we were taken care of. But we were able to walk around and just see everything and get in everything and interact with the booths with people.
That's amazing.
And
I'm still in awe.
It was absolutely amazing, and it was great. Like, I'm not that big on the celebrity guests. Yes, there's some that I want to see if they're there, and that's awesome. Like Henry Winkler is going to be down here in Steel City in December, and I've already met him, but I want to meet him again because he's just such a great person. But
everybody who's ever talked about him always talks about just how wonderful of a human being he is.
He is. He's a fantastic human being.
Cool.
But the things that draw me are the independent artists and looking at what they do with things. And like I would never think of putting certain things together, and they build these awesome worlds and this jewelry and this paintings and all that kind of stuff. That's what draws me when I go to Comic Cons. Is not your typical, this guy has all Star Wars stuff, I want to go to that booth, or this person has all anime, I want to go to that booth. It's like, no, this person took this anime and he meshed it together to make his own.
That's fantastic.
That's what draws me.
That is a great observation. Dee, last but not least, what do you think, hon?
For me, I like seeing the celebrities, but it's because they're out of their element per se. They're not on a set. You get to know them as a person. Because they're a person first and a celebrity second. At least that's what, I hope they would be.
Yeah, the bulk of them typically are, too.
So, I like to see them interact with people, of all ages, little kids up to, their parents. Another thing that I've grown to like is watching the artists that come in. Like I watched, Ken Lashley last year and Joe Jusko and Rob Zumo just create things that whole weekend, and just to see it go from a blank piece of paper to this magnificent piece of art. Like, wow. And they do it so effortlessly. And as a writer, I guess I can appreciate something they do because it's kind of along the same lines.
Right.
I create with words, they create with pictures. So to see that was like, wow, that's pretty cool to watch Ken Lashley, do an X-Men from start to finish in a couple hours while he's talking to people was like, that just blew my mind. Oh,
I had a couple of conversations with Steve Geiger, and it was just amazing. There were times where he would be in the conversation. He knew exactly what you were talking about, where you were, and who you were, and see, he was addressing you, but he was also focusing on this thing in front of him, this board in front of him, and just watching the images unfold. It's mind-boggling to ever see. You don't expect to see that process.
And just the classic characters you've grown up with, too. I mean, the indie artists who have their own stuff, but like I said, Ken Lashley, and I'm friends with a couple artists from Archie Comics, Dan Parent and Fernando Ruiz.
And there's a rumor right now, I think we're all but confirmed at this point, but that Dan and Fernando are going to be coming to FC3 17.
And that's what I'm hoping, because
we're looking forward to
they have their own independent book now called Die Kitty Die, which I just finished reading the hardcover of.
How was it?
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. It's sort of a satire on the modern day comic book, sort of how the big companies reboot everything.
Okay.
And it's a really funny storyline. There's good pokes at like the classic characters from like Harvey Comics. Instead of Richie Rich, you got Maximilians and Little Satan. And it's a very funny book, very clever, and I'm looking forward to it. But to watch them draw, I grew up reading Archie. Everybody knows the Archie and Jughead and Betty and Veronica. And to see them sit down and draw those characters in front of me, it's amazing to me.
It's fun. That's a lot of fun. And then see, what's the one thing we didn't really touch on? We touched on panels, we touched about guests, touched about energy and artists. Well, then there's the vendor floor, and that's a big component of just about any convention. The vendor floor being an important aspect where you get your merchandise, your memorabilia, your souvenirs.
And find that one comic you've been looking for.
Exactly.
Oh my God, I was looking for this Doom Patrol.
Or a T-shirt. Like I remember at a convention a few years back, I got this T-shirt. It was a Star Trek thing. It was a red shirt. And it was the complaint. It was like a red shirt was muttering under his breath at Captain Kirk behind his back. Yeah, sure. No, I'll go ahead. I'll protect the alien princess. Oh, no, I'll go behind the rock. Sure, no problem, Captain. You know?
What are these T-shirts you speak of?
Oh, I know.
You don't have any, right?
You don't have any nerd shirts, do you, Billy?
I don't have any at all.
We got an extra one for you, by the way.
Oh, excellent.
What size?
Extra large.
Extra large. Okay,
yes,
we're gonna get you an FC3 shirt.
Absolutely.
So, but the vendor floor is a very important part, but it should never be the dominant part.
No.
I've seen a couple of conventions where they really strive to bring a ton of vendors in. And I don't think that's fair to the vendors, nor is it fair to the patron, because you get this massive overlay. Yeah, I've seen conventions where you have like 12 T-shirt vendors, and they all have these wildly different prices, and that's not fair to the vendor either. Yeah.
And a lot of them bring the same thing.
They bring the same thing, exactly.
There's no variety, and I think that's something we strive to do is get a good variety.
We're going to work on variety, and we're always going to keep the number, not low, but we're always going to try and balance the number of vendors that we have on the floor to the number of people we anticipate coming through
into
the door.
Space that we have available.
Yeah, because you want to give them the variety so that the person with the ticket goes onto the vendor floor and has a decent chance of finding something they might be interested in. But we're also trying to think of our vendors. We want them to feel like they have a good shot at because they're going to spend their money to come spend some time with us. And so they're just as an important component of the equation as the person holding the ticket. So if everybody has kind of a fair shot at having a good time that weekend, then we feel like we've succeeded. Anyway, that's my rant on that. That's my rant on that. That's an important thing for me. You're really never going to see hundreds upon hundreds of vendors
to the point where you can't remember, where did I see that?
Yeah. It's hard to keep it organized.
You spend the rest of your day looking for it.
And Brian does Brian Burke is our vendor liaison. He's the one who handles the vendor floor, and he does such an absolutely fantastic job of finding these great people and getting them organized so that they're not all grouped in on top of each other, so they're spread out across the room. And the headache that he puts himself through all the time to try and get that just right, and I watch the work that he does, and it's amazing. So that's so those are the components of a show, and we can talk about that and that and that and the panels and the vendor floor and the activity. What we want to do right now is move on from there and say, what else makes a really good show? Now, Sybil, I think you tapped on the big thing, the energy of the show, the people. And so what are some of the things we're looking forward to make sure that when an FC317 goes off in May 20th and 21st of next year of 2017, what are the things that are going to make it just that monster that you can't wait to be a part of?
Sleep beforehand.
What is the sleep thing that you think
I'm starting now.
You speak of? No. I wish I could.
Sleep? What's that?
Yeah,
It'll be, instead of daylight savings time, it's called sleep savings time.
Yeah, there you go. Sleep saving. We're all taking the week off before FC317 so we can just lay in bed.
I can't.
No.
None of us can.
Not with our jobs.
No.
Nope.
Billy, what do you think? What would really kind of just make the whole thing stand out?
Excuse me.
Absolutely.
Just before I get to that, you mentioned the overall impression that the convention makes.
Yeah.
And I work on the Brother Weeze show, and my coworker, Paulie, the producer of the show, just happened to be at a wedding at the convention center.
Oh, yeah.
The day of, I think, the Saturday of FC3 last year.
Okay.
And he was up on the second floor, and he looked down, and he goes, that's something I'd like to be a part of. That looked cool. A lot of fun. As he knew I was there somewhere, so he was kind of looking from above down at the convention thinking how much fun that was. So I just wanted to tell you guys.
I appreciate that. And that's cool. And it worked out really well because for the first year, for 2016, we had our friends at Experience Entertainment. They brought a big display, including the... Go ahead.
Supernatural's
baby, the car that Sam and Dean drive around
in. Their
in.
name is Thor.
The name for their version, Thor. But they also had a TARDIS from Doctor Who. They had
some walkers.
They had some walkers from Walking Dead. They had a mannequin dressed up as Deadpool, who's a popular character these days.
He was all over the place.
Oh, he was just that's a fun thing. So it was great to be able to look down. You saw our staging area. You saw the Experience Entertainment area, and that definitely, I can understand how that could make an impression. That was a lot of fun.
And I'm sorry, what was the question again? I got too busy.
What's that thing that you're looking for that would make a convention just kind of jump out at you?
I think the more people that show up, it just cosplayers are always fun to look at.
Oh yeah, they
even though I don't do
is amazing.
Even though I don't do it, they're what you take pictures of, and sort of like. It's just the people that you get to meet are just a lot of fun.
They're
like
also
the
like
artists.
the celebrities too.
Yeah,
they can be.
And I think one of the things I do remember from this year's was seeing these little kids. They would see the Dalek from Doctor Who,
right,
or R2, or somebody from the 501st in a full-fledged stormtrooper outfit.
Oh yeah,
and they would be like, "Whoa, they're really real." It's like that they see it on the TV or on a computer. But when they can see it in real life, it's like, wow, it is real.
And this kind of tags on when we were in the run-up to the show, we've had this wonderful relationship with the Strong Museum of Play that we've been building up. And we've been invited to set up a booth there to advertise the show and participate in a couple of their special weekends. The last one was Superhero Weekend, which was a couple of weeks before FC3. And one of our interns, Kelsey, dressed up as Princess Elsa from Frozen, which is it's a huge character, absolutely
not a superhero per
se, but
a superhero to little girls.
Huge character, and a really important character as of late. And to see these the children, I can't even say little girls because little boys too, and the children walking by, they would see her in this costume, and she plays it so well. When she's got that outfit on, she just owns it. And
she is Elsa.
She becomes Elsa at that point, and then when she gets her friend Emily dressed up as Anna. It's all over. It's gone. But to see the magic in the faces of the children when they would see these characters just wandering around, to see the creativity and the energy that people put into these costumes that they wear so proudly, it's just a ton of fun.
And actually, to be able to get kids involved back into the world of comic books, because it's sort of become a grown-up thing. A lot of the books now are more adult-oriented.
Yeah.
There aren't as many comic books for kids to read. When I grew up, it was all kids' books. You didn't have the various labelings of this Y7 and mature audience. No, they were comic books, and you went and you picked up if you wanted the Batman or the Superman or the Archie or whatever.
And this is going to be, I think, a future podcast, and I know Tony is itching for that too,
yeah.
and where we'll settle in and we'll talk about comic books really in depth. But I was one of the ones that bandwagoned with Iron Man when Robert Downey Jr. became Tony Stark, and those two faces become indelibly connected to each other at this point. I started following the Iron Man comic for the first. I'd always been an Amazing Spider-Man guy, maybe X-Men once in a while.
Right.
But then when Tony Stark hits the screen in 2008, boom, I'm an Iron Man fan all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, that came out of nowhere, to be honest with you.
That was
Iron
wild.
Man was never someone I read much of.
He was never an
either.
A-lister for a long time. And that was the thing. When I started picking up a book, I went to my regular shop and I started getting them onto my pull list. And then I started doing some research into the history. And to see, it touches on what you were talking about, because you have these edgy, adult, sometimes violent stories.
The most popular ones nowadays, Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Kid can't. What, are you going to get Baby Walking Dead out there? No.
And I found somebody making reference to an issue of Iron Man from the 60s where he was chasing this absolutely ludicrous, silly, beyond belief villain, and the guy was getting away from him, but instead of taking to the air, Iron Man lifted up his feet, popped out roller skates, and started chasing him down Main Street on roller skates, because naturally that's what you're supposed to do in a suit of armor.
Yeah.
And back in the 60s.
It really, it puts it in perspective what Billy was just talking about, how things have kind of aged, but it's good to bring the younger set back in and show them that they're still a part of things.
There was an episode of Wonder Woman where she was on a skateboard.
Yeah.
Well, skateboarding was very popular in the 70s.
Definitely.
You know, it still is to a particular, but it's more underground these days.
Yeah, definitely. At RIT, I go to school at RIT. There's a definite skateboarding community there.
And
don't tell Riker.
Don't tell Riker. Tanya's son had a rough moment on a skateboard recently.
Oh, I saw that picture.
Yeah.
No skateboards.
Sybil, what do you think, hon? What's going to bring that energy that you were talking about?
The energy that I'm talking about is all the different types of people coming together. Like you were talking about, we do have people who are all about comics. When my dad goes to a comic book, the first day of the convention, all he does is goes to his comic book guy that he has, this is my guy at this show, and he goes and pulls comic books all day. Seriously, 8 hours, I swear to God, this man stands in front of all the boxes and pulls out the ones that he wants. And, you have those guys, and then you have the guys who are there strictly for the celebrities, and you have the people that are there strictly for the cosplay contest, and you have the people that are there strictly for finding that toy that they had as a kid, and they heard that some collector must have it there somewhere. It's bringing together all of these different people into one room because we can all enjoy everything at the same time.
That's awesome. And you know what? And it may not even be that you find that item at the convention, but you make the connection with the people who might know where to find it too. Think of that die-cast that your dad was talking about. He had found a machine or a cast to cut boxes to create a certain type of comic book storage box, and he'd been looking for it for a while.
Short boxes that has the end go all the way up, because the ones nowadays, they only cut halfway through the box.
Right.
And that dents the front and the back comic.
And we were able to bring that connection to him. He found somebody who actually had access to it. So they didn't have it there at the show, but he was able to make contact, exchange information, and now he has it. That's awesome. See, it's stuff like that just makes the day. When you can bring two people together, that's cool.
Yeah, and you also, if you go to a convention, our tagline is where it all comes together.
Right.
And that's true. We bring every aspect together. But you also might go to our convention or any convention and realize, hey, I wasn't familiar with this. I got to see a little bit about it. I like it. Let me learn more about it. So there's an educational aspect, too, that we kind of don't do consciously, but you're consciously doing it by having all of these things together under one roof.
I'm so glad you said that, because you rang a bell in the back of my head, Deanna. I've got a great anecdote from the 2016 show, and it took a good 4 or 5 months for it to come around. I was at my comic book shop, and I was doing my usual weekly, picking up my usuals, and there was a young woman there, and she had a Rock City Roller Derby T-shirt on. And I said, oh, hey, yeah, we had those at FC3. They came and did a demonstration. I go, were you in the crew? She goes, no, I was in the audience. That's why I got into them.
Oh, cool.
She got into Rock City Roller Derby because she saw them at FC3. And I was blown. I mean, for me, that was everything right there. That was like the perfect validation. This is why we put the show on right there on the spot.
That's amazing.
I was like,
and if you do
I laughed about it for days.
It's like a domino effect. Who else does that affect?
Who else can you introduce to something?
Right.
What did I just walk into a Star Trek panel? Well, I never really watched Star Trek. Well, maybe I'm going to start taking a look at it because these fans really pointed out some good stuff.
Or, if there's somebody who does a cosplay costume that you thought about doing, but you haven't managed to do it, you see it at a convention. It's like, wow, it can be done. Let me see if I can talk to that person.
Exactly.
Maybe they can give me hints, suggestions, etc., on how I can do it for myself.
Actually, that's how I wound up at Toronto. I mentioned I've been to Fan Expo in Toronto.
Yeah.
Susan and I were walking around, and we saw someone cosplaying as one of the Weeping Angels.
Oh, jeez.
And at that point, I didn't know what that was. Or we just knew it looked cool.
Yeah.
So Susan asked, and at one point, so we went to Netflix. When we got home, a couple weeks later, let's check out Doctor Who.
There you go.
That sounds like, and
that's how
we
he gets
wound up with the Christopher Eccleston,
right?
Into David Tennant,
and
Matt
Smith, and Peter Capaldi,
and now I'm a huge fan.
That's awesome.
I hadn't watched it since I was a kid with the Tom Baker years.
So if we can inspire just one person to try something new, that's the win right there. That's the win. That's awesome. Yeah. Oh man, and it's funny because that Weeping Angel. was premiered in an episode of Doctor Who called Blink. It was David Tennant's era, and it's widely regarded as one of the best Doctor Who episodes of the rebooted series since 2005. And I'm forced to agree. I mean, there's been some great ones. There's been amazing episodes.
My two favorites are that one and the Vincent Van Gogh episode.
Oh, see, I was going to go there with Matt Smith's 11th Doctor.
And I'm not a huge Matt Smith fan.
No.
I like it. It's a great show still, but I liked Tennant better. But that Vincent episode had me bawling at the end.
It's just the emotion at the end and that final scene in the art gallery. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Tony.
Yeah. My personal favorite from that is probably dinosaurs on a spaceship.
See that? Because it was just so fun.
Yeah,
it was
such an absurd concept.
Yeah.
And just to hear Matt Smith's delivery of dinosaurs on a spaceship,
His
that
excitement.
was like so cool.
It was just like, but that was I think that was the hallmark of the Matt Smith era, and we'll have a Doctor Who podcast so we can focus, because I can talk about Doctor Who for days. Tanya's been she's been a victim of that.
The same way I can talk about Star Wars for days.
Seriously, I could do that too, kid.
Yeah.
But the long and the short of it, I think the hallmark of Matt Smith's Doctor was just his overall enthusiasm for everything. And somebody posted a picture of him wearing the fez in that Day of the Doctor episode, and just being like celebrating that he's wearing this fez. And the caption was, "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the world's oldest 5-year-old." And that sums up Matt's Doctor completely, I think.
It took me a little while
to
get into Matt.
Comic books kind of not being for kids anymore.
Right.
And I think what I like to see is when these parents bring their kids and to see their kids kind of like things that they see their parents like it, and they're like, oh, this is kind of cool, when they see other kids their age liking it. Because today, so many kids are not afraid to like things, but they're concerned, well, if I like this, is it going to make me different? But when they see people like themselves, thinking, it's more of not an acceptance thing, but they're like, hey, this is cool. It's okay if I think it's cool.
And coming from a teacher perspective, anything that the kids are reading, books, graphic novels, anything that we encourage all the reading of everything.
My son, my 13-year-old, has been cutting his teeth on reading on Nova. So you know what? We had another wonderful conversation, and I thank everybody for participating. And yet again, thank you for listening. And I think we're going to wrap it at this point, and we'll get ourselves ready for the next one. And you're going to play that music again, aren't you?
This is great.
The opening music is nice and serious. It's got that depth, and then there's this at the end, and this is kind of how we treat ourselves.
You go into it thinking seriously, then after you listen to
having some fun.
No, this is what they are.
Thank you, Billy. No, I appreciate it. And thank you, Dee and Sybil. Thanks for listening, Tanya, Tony. Appreciate you guys being along for the ride as always.
No problem.
And thank you again, and we'll see you all soon.